Okay, welcome back. Now we're going to add the TV screen and the telephone, the computer screen even, and we're going to add the telephone to our scene and start finishing this scene off. Let's have a look. So I want to teach you a few conventions about 3ds Max that we need to sort of get in the habit of. The first being naming conventions. Okay, we've been quite lazy with this so far. I say I have. I apologise. Right, so I'm going to click on this back plane. It's the back wall, and up here you'll say it says plane 1. So what I'm going to do is change that to back wall. Spelled incorrectly. I'm going to change that to back wall. I can then go through and start naming everything up in my scene. So I've got my desk and so on and so forth. So what I'd like you to do is just name everything in your scene. I'm just going to do that while I pause the video. Okay, welcome back. That shouldn't take you long. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at everything that's in my scene. So I'm going to come up here and select by name. Now this produces this list, which gives me a comprehensive list of everything that's in my scene, providing everything's selected up here. So I can see under display geometry, I've got a back wall, a carpet, a desk handle, and a side wall. Under lights, I've got this omni-light here. And then under cameras, display cameras, I've got my camera target and my camera. The camera target is just the bit that the camera is pointing at. So let's have a look what I mean by that. So as you know, we put a camera in when we press Control and C. Here's my camera, and here's the target. Basically, the target is what it's looking at. It's this end part here, okay? Don't worry, it just means that I can move that target around to change the view of the camera without moving the actual camera's position. If you did want to easily select something, you couldn't see it. Say, for example, I wanted to select the desk handle and I couldn't quite get it in the scene. I would just press on desk handle, press OK, and there you go, it's selected. So that's a good convention to get in the habit of naming things, especially when you start to get scenes that have got, 50, 100 objects in it. You've got no idea when you've got sphere 27 and plane 45 and all sorts going on. You'll never know the difference. So start that early. It's a good habit to get into, okay? Another thing I want to teach you about is layers, okay? Just like Photoshop, those of you aware of it, we can manage our layers. So we click on Manage Layers here. In the moment, we're in a layer called 0, which is default. And you can see all my objects are in here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my camera and my target, and then I'm going to press Create New Layer. Now that layer, called Layer 1 that I've just selected, that I've just made, has put everything that was selected into that layer, okay? Now what I'm going to do is right click, rename that, and call that Camera Layer, okay? So this layer, Camera Layer, only has two things in, the camera and the camera target, and I'm going to freeze that layer. See, it goes grey, which means that now I can't click on that, I can't accidentally move it, which is good because I don't accidentally want to move it. What shall I select next? Okay, so what I might do, I'm going to leave the Omni in this default layer, but everything else I want to put in their own layers. So I might have the floor, side wall, back wall. I'm going to make a layer for them, and I'm going to call them set. Okay, so that's my set. I'll put walls in brackets, although we know it's got the carpet in as well. So let's have a look, press on the plus, yep, got all three on there. I could freeze that. You see that all greys out. You obviously lose your texture because it's frozen. The texture still applied to it, you just can't see it in the viewport. So what does that leave? Desk handle and desk, okay? Let's click on my handle, click on my desk, new layer, rename that layer, desk, and guess what? Both two of them in the desk. Let's freeze that. I can't select on anything now other than the Omni light. It's the only thing that's active because look, I haven't frozen that layer down yet. I can just freeze individual objects in a layer, so I could freeze the target but not the camera. I mean the camera but not the target and things like that, see? But for now I'm just going to freeze everything, okay? So I've got 4 nice layers there. It's quite a good structure. It's a good thing to get into. You don't have to put everything in layers, but at the same time it's good if you've got an object, for example the desk, that should be in a layer, the set itself should be in a layer, and so on and so forth. Okay, so those are 2 really good conventions we've got into. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to model the computer screen first and foremost. There are millions of ways of modelling those. Box modelling them would probably be the easiest way I can think of. But so far I want to teach you about booleans because I haven't shown you anything about booleans yet, and we need to learn about booleans. Okay, so not necessarily the most conventional method, but I'm going to model a computer screen using Boolean method. We'll model something like an Apple Mac or something. So I come up here to create. I'm going to go to, I've got my geometry. Rather than a standard primitive, I'm going to click drop down. I'm going to choose extended primitives, okay? And what I'm looking for is a chamfer box that gives the rounded edges. Now, if you want to find a reference picture, be my guest, okay? But the chances are you're all using a computer right in front of your faces. I suggest copying the one that I do. And then if you want to model your own one, that's fine. I'm modelling from a laptop, so I don't have a good reference, but I know what an apple mat looks like off the top of my head. It's quite an easy shape. So I'm going to draw a chamfer box. Now, let's draw it nice and big in the front viewport, something like that. Quite nice, okay? It's drawn like a normal box. So I click and let go, and I can set the height just like I would if I was modelling a box. Okay, no different to a box. Click again, and now guess what? I've got one more thing to set, and that is how rounded the edges are. Okay, so if I scroll my mouse up and down, you see I can set this fillet, or they're calling it a chamfer box, or that is technically a fillet. So I'm going to have something nice and rounded like that. Okay, nice and user friendly, just like the Mac interface. Okay, so let's zoom in on there, have a look around that. Lovely. Okay, right, what we need to do, essentially what a boolean does is it minuses one object from another. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I want to take the front of this off. I want this nice rounded back, but I don't want all this front part here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come extended primitives, standard primitive, draw myself a box, draw myself a nice large box like that, that's wider than my screen, give it some height, come into the left viewport, and I'm going to move it so it's about midway through my box like that. Okay, so you can see, or can you? You can see, he says, famous last words, trying to rotate his screen, come on. Here's my objects. Now, you will notice a problem, they're greyed out. Now, why are they greyed out? Let's think about this. So, what I've been doing, here's a tick, is modelling my computer screen, chamfer box, and box, in a layer called desk. Now, we don't want to do that. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer, and I shall call this layer Mac. Okay, you can see the tick, that means that's the active layer, that's the layer I'm working on. I'm going to unfreeze this layer, and at the moment it has nothing in it, alright? So if I go to desk layer, click on the drop down, I'm going to right click on box, press select, and I'm going to click on my Mac layer, and press this plus button, add selected object to the highlighted layer. Now if you didn't want to do it that way, you could simply just click on the object, now that it's unfrozen, and add it to that layer. Okay, so now chamfer box and box are in the Mac layer. I can freeze the desk layer again, and guess what? Both these objects are there. So as you can see in my viewport, I've got this box that I've drawn much wider than my screen, much taller, but also at the same time it doesn't cover the whole of it. Okay, so I want to keep this back, but what I want to do is I want to take this shape away from this shape. So I click on the shape that I want to stay. I come here to standard primitives, I click on drop down, and I'm going to choose compound objects. Once I've done that, I choose boolean. Okay, once I've done that, I press on pick operand B, basically select the object you want to take away from your selected object. So I press on that, press on the box, and have a look at that. It minuses that object. So you can see I've got this sort of shape here. Alright, it's starting to look a little bit like a screen. Press on boolean, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that into an editable poly by right clicking, convert to editable poly. Okay, so once we've made the editable poly, what we're going to do is we're going to select on the polygon face, click on this face, and we want to inset it a little bit. We want a border around our screen. So the way we do that is we come down to the inset option. You can either click on the settings button and change the settings manually, which might work a bit better, something like that, or you can press the tool itself. But I'm going to do this, press tick, and then I'm going to extrude it in a fraction. So go to settings and extrude that face in a fraction like that. Okay, let's click off that, and you can see I'm starting to get that screen. Alright, now what I want to do at this moment in time, that's all one object, but what I want to do is I want to make an actual screen itself. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on this back face, I'm going to hold shift on my keyboard, and I'm going to drag this one selected face out ever so slightly, like that. And this clone part of mesh option comes up. Now I'm going to choose clone to object, and I'm going to change this name, and I'm going to call it screen. Press OK, and what that does is makes a completely new object, alright? So we can unhighlight editable poly, What I do want to do is I'm going to change that name to Mac. Okay, so I'll change it up there to Mac. Now click on the screen that we just made, and you'll notice we've now selected the screen. Now that might look like I've got the screen selected, but I haven't. I've only got this face here selected. So the way to demonstrate the best is I'll quickly change that colour by pressing on the colour here. Let's give it like a purple colour, and you can see we've got a screen on the background. Now that's starting to look quite nice. I'm going to add a different texture. I'm going to add a video on the background there. Okay, and then I'm going to make a quick stand for this screen. Okay, we don't really need to worry about the back, because you're never going to see the back. It's only a brief scene where you're going to see the front and forking narrative. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a back to this. Okay, you might as well say polys. There's no point modelling out the back and shaping it and things like that. So the least amount of polys we can use, the better. So the way I'm going to make this stand might be slightly unconventional, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go create. And I'm going to use an option, something we've already used before, and a few modifiers. So I'm going to come, rather than geometry, I'm going to go shapes. I'm going to use a line, and I'm going to draw myself a stand. So I'm going to start intersecting there a little bit. I'm going to draw myself a line that comes nearly all the way to the table. Click that point and hold shift. Shift will make a straight line. Come to somewhere about halfway through it so it looks like it's balanced. Press again. Okay, right click. Stops pressing. Okay, made myself a line. I want to edit that line a little bit. Okay, I'm going to add a little smooth corner to this part here. So the way I do that is I come up to modify. I've got line settings. So I go vertex. Highlight that one vertex there. I scroll down and I go to fillet, and I'll make a nice fillet on that corner. Okay, make a nice rounded edge. Very nice, very nice. Come out of there. That's a nice stand. Okay. So in top viewport, I can move that stand to the middle. Now at this moment, all it is a line, and as you will remember, lines do not render, okay, unless obviously I tell it to be renderable. Now, there are different ways that I could extrude this line. Obviously I can render it and turn it into a rectangle and things like that, but I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a modifier, because we need to practice with these modifiers more. I'm going to choose extrude. 18.5, that will do, I suppose. I could use the align option up here to align to this shape, but I'll just do it by eye quickly. Happy with that. Now, that's still a very thin line though, okay? Yes, I've got the right width, but I don't have the right sort of thickness to it. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on modify. Some of you have seen this in lesson before. I'm going to scroll all the way down to shell, and I'm going to add an outer shell at 1.3. And guess what? I've got myself a nice looking shell there. And oh dear Lord, let's scroll it in here. This viewport thing's annoying me. Okay, a half decent looking stand. I might extrude that out a little bit more so it looks a bit more weighty, because that doesn't really look like it would hold its weight, does it? That'll do. That looks a bit more stable now. Go on then, have a bit more. We'll change it to 1.5. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple more holes in it with the boolean tool, but I'm going to use a different type of boolean. I'm going to use pro boolean. So I come up here, I'm going to draw myself two cylinders. So I come to standard primitives, cylinder. I'm going to scroll in, and I'm going to draw two shapes that I want to cut out of this stand just to make it a bit more dynamic. So the way I do that, so draw my cylinder, push, and I'm just going to copy that up. So I've got two. So I'm holding shift, moving it up, press OK. And then I select them both, and I'm going to move them. So look, in this view, they're intersecting that shape. So what should I do now? In the slowest motion ever. Right, if I want to just have these objects selected, I'm going to highlight them all. I don't want to see any of the rest of the scene, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Alt and Q on my keyboard, and there you go. I've only got the object selected that I want. So if I want to go back, I just press Alt and Q again. Okay, I'm going to highlight the screen. Press Alt Q. Now I want to quickly do a boolean. So what I'm going to do, not boolean, I'm going to select the object to minus from. I'm going to come up here, compound objects. I'm going to choose pro boolean. That means I can select more than one object, and it says start picking rather than pick up brand B. I'm going to pick one. I'm going to pick two objects. Turn off start picking, and have a look at that. He says, and I've made two holes there. Okay, so once I've finished, I press start picking. I've made two holes. There's two booleans, because with a normal boolean you can only make one hole. Okay, you make one subtraction. With a pro boolean you can make as many as you like. Turn that off. As you'll notice, it changes the look of the mesh a little bit, because obviously it's got to compensate for that. When I'm done, I press Alt Q, and I'm back in the room with my view. and I am quite happy with that. Let's have a look in camera view. Very nice, all right? Might rotate that a bit to face the camera, but that's a good start, all right? Now we look at the telephone and texturing later.